Welcome back to another episode of Building the Pride. I'm your host, Drew. And I am not joined by my co-host, Mike, today. Mike is having a routine procedure performed and is not available to hang out with us. So we are going to talk about the Detroit Lions and their wrapping up of the free agency period. Free agency wrap up. Enter. Here we go. So let's go back to the Pride of Detroit and we'll see what the Lions have done since we last talked. Okay, they have signed Greg Dortch. He's a wide receiver and kick returner. Probably going to take over the Khalif Raymond role. You know what? I think I can do this without my glasses. This glare on my glasses is ridiculous. They have signed tight end Tyler Conklin, 1 year, $1.3 million. So these are basic, like bottom of the barrel, near veteran minimum contracts, 1 year deals. They signed guard Ben Bartch, who was recently with the San Francisco 49ers. Peyton Turner, who I think will end up with the Al-Quadin Muhammad role. And then I still think that they had probably signed guys like Damone Clark, Roger McCurry, and DJ Wanham since before the last time that we spoke. So there's been a lot of questions about how the fandom should view this offseason free agency period for the Detroit Lions. And people really want to boil it down to, is this good or is this bad? Is this white? Is this black? Is this a positive or a negative? And those are excellent questions. I think those are fantastic questions. Hey, what's up, Joseph? Hope you're doing well, buddy. And I think the thing that we should take away from this free agency period are more gray than they are black and white, unfortunately. So here's how I'm seeing it. First of all, I think that Brad Holmes has stuck to his guns on how he approaches free agency. So a year ago, there was a day one signing of DJ Reed, right, for a pretty competitive free agency contract at his position, right, $16 million a year. And so this year, he signed Cade Mays, which was certainly not the top center. That was Tyler Linderbaum, but arguably the number two center on the market who actually reached free agency. So like Connor McGovern was re-signed by the Bills. Tyler Biadasz was signed by the Chargers, like before free agency actually began. So the people who actually made it to the free agency market, Brad signed the number two player at that position to, certainly not a huge salary. He ended up getting, where is he here? 3 years, $25 million. So what? $8 million a year. And then we have to see the structure of the contract to see what his cap hits are actually going to be on a year-by-year basis. So not crazy. Not crazy money spent, but money has been spent. So Brad Holmes in this free agency period has signed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys. So certainly if there's questions from the fan base about what, quote unquote, what are we doing in free agency, it's not about the quantity of players that are being signed, right? It's about the quality, the impact that those players might have on the roster. And so I think one of the continuing frustrations that, think about football only on Sunday fans have with Brad Holmes is that it's not always obvious that he is utilizing every phase of the season, every time period of the season to, quote unquote, make the team better. right? So if you're somebody who pays an above average amount of attention, so someone like me, or if you're watching me or listening to me talk right now, somebody like you, and you're paying attention to what the Lions are doing on a week to week or even a month by month basis, I think it's hard to look at these moves and say, I see the vision here, right? So there's been a lot of guesses as to what the vision is. And so I think one thing that has helped me try and come to grips with the vision is that I don't think that Brad Holmes views players, or maybe all players, in the idea that like this guy is either an impact or non-impactful player. The way that I am looking at it now is Brad Holmes is actively out there trying to acquire specific skill sets. So what do I mean when I say that? So last year, Al-Qadim Muhammad played something between 400 and 500 snaps, right? And so what we see as fans was that he had like a 10 or an 11 sack season, depending on who's recording the sacks, right? And we're thinking, oh, finally, a guy across from Aiden Hutchinson who is going to produce sack totals, which is the only real way that fans, I think, can easily digest how well someone is rushing the passer. We finally have a guy that's producing over an entire season across from Aiden Hutchinson. Okay, but Aiden is playing 1,000 snaps or close to it. And, here's Al-Qadim Muhammad getting 400 to 500. So maybe a little bit less than half of what Aiden is playing. So that means that there's another guy playing the other half of those snaps. And that guy has traditionally been a quote unquote Marcus Davenport type. So what do I mean when I say Marcus Davenport type? Like a bigger body, 6'5", 6'6", 270 plus pounds, who sets an edge, or basically to translate that even further is someone who's pretty good against the run. And this guy is not asked by the scheme that the Lions play to rush the passer or generate sack totals or pressures or whatever. They want to crush the pocket, crush the can is the way that they talk about it. And so half the time you have somebody like what DJ Wanham is going to be on early downs, like the can crushing, bigger bodied, non-sack total generating defensive end across from Aiden Hutchinson. And then on third down or fourth down or obvious passing situations, in comes Al-Qadim Muhammad, or what I'm going to be calling the Peyton Turner role under these signings. And then that guy is going to get to play the other half of the snaps. And I think that fans want to see the Lions go out into free agency and sign Trey Hendrickson, or go to the draft and draft an Akeem Mesidor, someone that is going to be a 3-down defensive end that's going to be able to do both things, right? And I just don't think that Brad views the roles on the team in that way. So what that means for the fans is that we're going to be continuously frustrated because the roster is not being constructed according to our expectations, right? So that's a problem. It's not a problem for Brad Holmes unless people stop going to the games. But like the only thing that's going to contribute to people not going to the games is not winning football games. So long as the Detroit Lions are winning football games, they could be running the wing T formation, and playing prevent defense the entire time. And as long as they're winning games, people will go and watch, right? So winning is the answer and the cure for everything. So the only thing that fans care about ultimately is whether or not what you're doing generates wins. And if it does, they'll get on board with it. But it's easier to see the signing of a Trey Hendricks. Hendricks? Can't remember. As directly contributing to winning than signing Peyton Turner and DJ Wanham to bottom of the market deals, right? 1 year prove it contracts. Now, I will also say that Brad Holmes has had a really poor record with these like 1 year prove it contracts. Like Marcus Davenport obviously did not produce. Emmanuel Mosley was consistently hurt. Other players that he has signed to 1 year deals have, I would say, arguably not actively contributed in the way that they were hoping they would be contributing. But it also means that you have guys like Trevor Nowatzki or Nick Whiteside or Avonte Maddox or Rock Ya-Sin who have done good things. And like this year, like Rock Ya-Sin, who we signed to a 1 year deal last year, is getting paid 3 times as much as he made last year to come back on another 1 year deal in the hopes that he plays to the same level or even better. And so I think that like when these contracts during free agency, ignorant fans, I have little faith in. Ha ha ha. Ignorant fans, I have little faith in. So Brad, it is. Possibly, entirely possible. So it is, I think, difficult to see like the Rock Ya-Sin 1 year prove it deal work out the way that they want it to when the team goes 9-8 and like Rock Ya-Sin is a backup player who ended up playing pretty meaningful and significant snaps for the team later on in the year. Like it's the highs are not very high and the lows are pretty low, right? Like Marcus Davenport was a pretty low signing, and now he's not on the team. So, and I don't believe that he's been signed by any other team, so it's tough. It's tough to quantify and say like, this is the right way to be building the roster when the goods are not very good and the lows are pretty bad and the misses are pretty bad. And so I have a friend at work who has asked me a lot of questions about the Lions and like the draft and that kind of stuff. And it's been a lot of fun talking about that stuff. I love it. That's why I do the show. And so, but I like the fact that he's asking and like you guys are asking me these questions because it helps me consider things from a different perspective. Like, so here's the number one perspective that I get asked. Like, how come we don't have any cap space? Why can't we go out and sign these bigger name free agents? Like, why don't you just restructure Glasgow, Decker, and Davenport? Guess no one wants them. Well, I mean, that's just it. Like, none of those guys, I haven't even heard about Taylor Decker getting like a visit. Like, it's not like, oh, Taylor Decker is visiting the Cowboys or, just pick a team at random, Glasgow might have to retire. And Davenport, I think that the experience that he's had with the Lions has only proven the worst thoughts about what the rest of the NFL had about him, which is that he's too injury prone to be worth the bare minimum, right? Now, I will say when it comes to Decker, like there's always the possibility that there's a reunion at some point. Maybe he takes off 2 months at the beginning of the season, continues to get healthy, continues to stay in shape. There's an injury on the Lions, God forbid. And they call him up and they were like, do you want to come back for whatever? They're already paying him like $10 million to not be on the team. Like if you paid him $5 million to come back for the remainder of the season, like that's not bad. Like is something like that possible? Well, the longer that he's not signed by any other franchise, the more likely something like that becomes, in my opinion. Now, maybe those bridges are just too burned at this point, and like certainly other NFL teams will have offensive line injuries at some point during the season. And like Taylor Decker, I would have to imagine would be near the top of any list, like to be like, we need a veteran to come in, so he might just sit back and be like, well, I'm going to wait for a contender to have an injury. Like, will the Seahawks have an injury or will the Rams or the Chiefs or somebody? that will pick me up, and if not, I'll just take my nine point something million dollars and spend time with my family, there's upside to that as well. But like the problem here has been cap space. Like people see the ability to restructure a player like a Jared Goff or Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Lee McNeil, and say, well, why don't you just do that and have a ton of money? Well, it's because you're not making any new money. You're just reducing the cap hit that player has in the current year. And to do that, you're pushing the money out to the future. And so every dollar, like let's say you owe player X $100 million and you're going to pay him $20 million a year. And in that first year, you need cap space. So you restructure his $20 million a year so that it's down to 10, right? Well, the way that you do that is then you can you take the difference, I believe, and you prorate it over the remaining years of the contract. So a lot of teams will add another year, a void year, onto the contract as a placeholder for the difference. So all you're doing is taking $10 million that you would owe him this year, and you're saying we're going to pay that to you in 4 years when you're not on the team anymore, like when your contract's been voided. And so, yeah, I mean, you have created cap space in the short term, but you have not reduced the amount of money that you owe that player. The only difference is that 4 years from now, if the cap continues to go up by $15 million a year, the cap should be up $60 million by the time that you have to pay out that $10 million. And so like the future value of money is what teams are relying on to reduce the overall impact on the salary cap. So so Brian's got an interesting point here. So let's take a look at this. Can't be mad at the GM for focusing on retaining all young all pros more than signing overpriced outsiders, right? So it's a good take. I mean, this is the homegrown talent, the draft and develop methodology that Brian's referencing here, right? And so I do believe that Detroit is, I will call it selective when it comes to players that it wants to add to its roster, right? In the terms of grit and culture and mindset, work ethic, that type of thing. And so it means that not every free agent is a candidate for the Detroit Lions, So, and of the pool of players who are, there's probably other teams that are interested in those guys, right? So that means that the price, if you're in demand, the price of you is going to go up. And so I think Brian's hit on something here where it's if you have an all-pro like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, I think Aiden's an all-pro, right? Second team all-pro. Interesting question is how many top players can a roster sustain? So this is the better question, I think. Not that your other question wasn't good, Brian, but this is the better one. So years ago, Mike and I took a look at how many $10 million a year players can a roster really support? And of course, the cap was less then, right? And so every year you should basically be able to add one $10 million per year guy, assuming the cap continues to go up by $15 million, right? And so every year you're going to draft more players, and hopefully, I mean, if you're drafting well or drafted like Brad has drafted in the past, you will add all pros at a reduced cost to the roster. And so if you look at Brad's first 3 drafts, they're chock full of high value contributors. Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ali McNeil were all year 1. Year 2, you have Aiden Hutchinson, J-Mo, Kirby Joseph. They were all in that class. So, and then in year 3, you had 4 guys, right? You have Laporta, Gibbs, Campbell, and Branch, right? That's 10 players, right? To this exact point. That's 10 players in 3 years that are, I mean, how many of those guys have been all pros? Penei Sewell's an all pro. St. Brown's multiple time. Kirby was an All-Pro. I believe Aiden was second team this last year. Jack Campbell is an All-Pro now. I don't think Branch is quite there yet, and I think Laporte is not quite there yet. And Gibbs somehow missed out on being an All-Pro this year, and only because Bijan Robinson, I think, almost set like an all-purpose record, but for the Falcons. It's top players at the premium positions: QB, tackle, edge, and wide receiver. So yeah, and that's another good point, right? So and that is part of this, right? So how many players can your roster sustain at 8 figures, right? That's a question. How many if those players are not at players of premium positions, how many can they support? Does it detract from the overall number of players that the roster can support if those players are at non-premium positions? And the 23 draft class should be a fucking case study in that exact thing. Every single one of those guys plays at a non-premium position, but unequivocally, they are all hits. They are all worthy of being starters on the Lions and probably a lot of other rosters in the NFL. How many rosters would Jahmyr Gibbs start for? How many would Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Sam Laporta start for? It's the overwhelming number of rosters in the NFL. Those guys are starters on, right? I have suspected that our early success has thrown off their long-term expectations for spending, and now we are trying to figure out how to keep all of the studs and not sink. That's completely correct, Brian. And this is the other side of it now, is that when you have a play, let's say you were drafting 2 to 3 guys a year that were contributors, right? So to get 10 guys, you would have to go 4 or 5 seasons. And instead, they have done it in 3. So they're at least a year, probably 2 years ahead of where they had projected to be, which means that cap space is gone. Well, they very clearly have no desire to participate in the compensatory pick system yet. I think that we're getting close to them having to participate in the compensatory pick system. There are teams out there in the NFL who actively make decisions with compensatory picks in mind. Brad Holmes is not yet one of them. I think that he should be. So for example, Tyler Biadasz, right? He was cut, which means that he's not an unrestricted free agent, which means that you can sign him and he does not count against the the compensatory pick formula. So the Chargers go out and they snap him up 3 years, whatever it was, right? Is Tyler Biadasz clearly a worse center than Cade Mays? Cade Mays might be cheaper, but is Tyler Biadasz a worse? If you signed Tyler Biadasz, the odds of you getting a 6th round compensatory pick increase. Is that equivalent value? To me, just being able to acquire the more picks is what is going to save the Detroit Lions roster once we are completely established, which I think that once they sign their 23 class, I would say that they are completely established because they will have maxed out the number of players that they are assigning top of their position group or long-term, clearly a pillar of the team type of money. I have a hard time believing they're not going to make every effort to re-sign all the first 4 players from the 23 class. So I have to imagine Gibbs, Campbell are going to get top of their position group money. And then the 2 second-round picks, Branch and Laporta, have clearly demonstrated that when they're healthy, they're excellent players that should be worth consideration for top of their position group money. But how do you do that? So what I think is going to happen is the cap's going to go up more. There's going to be some amount of rollover from this year to next year for the unused cap. And I think that they're going to cut Kirby Joseph because I don't think that his knee is ever going to be the same. And then if you cut Kirby, you have the money to sign Brian. And you might have enough money to sign Kirby or to sign Brian and Laporta between all the other factors. And like, I think that you will have to continue to restructure Jared Goff's deal to create the kind of cap space and budget that the team is going to require to continue signing those players. But if we take this year as an example, the Lions, the cap went up, they had their rollover, then they restructured Goff, right? So they added a void year to Goff's deal and put $16 million on that void year, and they lowered his cap hit by like, it was 69.6, and I think it's like 32.7. So it's like half of what it was, which freed up all the money that they needed to be cap compliant, and probably what they're going to need for like roster elevations when they go into the season, and like sign their rookie class, their practice squad players, that kind of stuff. But, and like maybe the saving grace is that they have this core of 21 through 23 draft classes. But like the 24 class with Terrion Arnold is certainly nowhere close to having 3 contributors. Like Terrion Arnold is a question mark still at this point. He does have this situation in Florida that might turn south at any moment. And if it does turn south, my guess is that he's not going to be on the roster. And then you have the 24 class. I'm sorry, Terrion was the 24 class. And then the 25 class, you also have nowhere close to 3 contributors from those classes. And like Tyleek's going to have to take over for DJ Reader. Yeah. And we don't know what that looks like yet. Coaches focus on team strategy, on their best players. All pro make teams better no matter the position outside of special teams. What all pro is not worth being a top pick? So, I mean, that's an excellent question, and it's one that I think the NFL is still debating on that. So like if you look at this year's draft class, like you could say guys like Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, and Sonny Styles are all very likely to be all pros at some point in their rookie contracts. And like the projection for those players is that, the odds that you are going to be top of your position group immediately are very high, which likely means that they're all pros. And but like if we narrow that focus and we look at the Detroit Lions roster, if you re-sign all 4 guys from the 23 class, like you do have 4 all pro caliber players at positions of value, right? They're not positions of value. Linebacker, running back, safety, tight end. Those are the bottom 4 in the NFL, but they're very quality players, right? So my question is it better to have 4 players at positional value roles, or is it better to have 2 guys at those particular roles? So like if the Lions had a top of their position group cornerback and another top of their position group edge rusher, is that better than having Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch? I think that you can make the argument that it is better. It's better. It might be equivalent money-wise, but the team might be better at winning football games. So like maybe it is a quantity versus quality kind of discussion. I love Sam, but I want him turned into picks before this draft. We can't keep absolutely everyone, and we have a ton of money on offense already. So like if you look at the Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, almost all of their money is on the offensive side of the ball, and like their defense costs nothing because their defense is all on rookie contracts. Witherspoon, Emanwari, Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe, like they were all on rookie deals. And like the Seahawks let guys walk because they were going to have to pay them. They let Kenneth Walker go. They let, what's his name? I think they let 2 of their players in their secondary, Reek Woolen and Josh Jobe, I think they let those players walk because they knew we're going to have to re-sign JSN, and you have to have part of your roster be cheap, right? So that is why, I mean, like the positions of value model is not a theory. Like all it is an examination of how the NFL as a group, as a market, spends their money on different positions. I mean, it's not like, oh, if you spend your money here, that's just better because we think that it's better to have an edge than a linebacker. The NFL has proven that out by how they spend money. Like it is proven that the NFL at least believes it is better to pay an edge twice as much as a linebacker. $40 million as opposed to $20 million, right? Let's look at let's see what Fred Warner makes here, just real quick. Now he probably signed his contract several years ago, so this might be a little bit out of date. But Fred Warner makes $21 million a year, right? And he is widely regarded as one of the only linebackers, off-ball linebackers in football that is a game changer, right? I like Jack Campbell. I like the way he plays football. I think he's done a nice job, but I don't think that he is at the kind of level where he is a quote unquote game changing linebacker, right? So if we look at edge rusher, the top guy in the business right now is Micah Parsons at 46.5. Then Aiden's at 45. TJ Watt's at 41. Danielle Hunter, whatever his name is at 40, and then Myles Garrett, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the top 5. They all make 40 plus a year. So is Aiden Hutchinson worth twice as much as Jack Campbell? Yeah, Jack Campbell is going to get Warner money. That's 100% true. Am I crazy? Because the twinkle in Holmes' eye when talking about Borum's consistency, this new shiny offensive line is the new we're good group, and so Noah in the first round look for Reader Lopez fixed. So I will say that I don't think the last time that I guessed what Brad Holmes was going to do was when he drafted Aiden Hutchinson. That's the last time I picked a player in the first round that Brad picked. So I have a terrible guess at what Brad's going to do. I will say that I feel that at no point in this roster's current construction have the Lions been as locked into two position groups, edge and tackle, that I feel like they quote unquote need to go and fill. So this is an excellent question, Fan Man. Let's you know what? Every time I get a question like this, my response is let's go do a mock draft. Because I think it just helps with the context of what we're talking about so much. So let's do this. Let's jump into a mock. Oh, by the way, Detroit Fan Man, I only use Mock Draft Hero now. I'm even considering dropping my PFF subscription because I don't need to use their mock draft simulator anymore. So thank you for the recommendation. That's been a fantastic one. Okay, so here we go. Start. So are the Detroit Lions locked into... So the question that posed by Detroit Fan Man, yeah, I like Mock Draft Hero. I think it's pretty solid. Are the Detroit Lions locked into taking a tackle or edge in the first round? Welcome to the club. Well, I appreciate that. All right, let's take a look at what this mock did here. So we've got no surprise at the top. Let's see. Tate, Tyson, Styles, Jermon McCoy, who I would like having on this roster. Jeremiah Love, Monroe Freeling, Ione went. Okay, Downs went, and Denzel Boston. Interesting. Okay, so here we go. The Lions have some options. Spencer Fano is still on the board. Caleb Lomu is teammate at Utah. Caden Proctor. The aforementioned Peter Woods. And then we have Blake Miller and Max Ahanacher, who I quite like, in this spot. So if you're the Lions and this is the way that the draft falls to you, do you see an edge here worth taking? Keldrick Falk has everything that the Detroit Lions say they want from like a Marcus Davenport type. High class, grit. He's super young. He's got all the physical traits, but the production is light. Now, is that because of how Auburn used him in their system? Can they project him to do something different in the Detroit Lions defensive scheme, especially if he's in the weight room for a year or two? And then he's 22 years old, halfway into his rookie deal, and all of a sudden he's like 280 pounds, but like fast as shit and super powerful. I think Falk might be the best pick, but that makes tackle tenuous. That is where Borom. That's where the Borom love gets concerning. Falk is the right body type. Yeah, he's that Marcus Davenport body type, right? Like if you're going to take an edge here, and it's because you want to make an impact right away, the pick is Mesidor, and it's not close. Like that's the most refined pass rusher in the class, and it's because he's been in college twice as long as he should be. Hey, BD Buster, what's up, buddy? So like but do you think that Keldrick Falk or Akeem Mesidor are the same caliber of prospects as a Spencer Fano? And if Brad Holmes really is about taking the best player available, is Dylan Tiananmen or Kenyon Sadiq in the running for the best player on the way that this board fell for the Lions? These are the questions I think you have to ask yourself. I don't think Brad will take an injury history in the first round. Probably no one over the age of 23. Well, he has done that consistently throughout his draft history. Brian is like the injury history has not played a role. Now, this is as high as Brad has picked in a while, in the last two classes. So I'm curious, like, can you play? So Spencer Fano is getting a lot of hype because not only did he play right tackle at a pretty high level at Utah, but there's also, can he play guard? He took snaps at center at the combine. Like, can you convert him? Derek Moore to me is just like Lawrence, maybe better in there. Well, I like Derek Moore because he played at Michigan and I saw the dude play, and I think that and then Eric Schlitt at Pride of Detroit has also said that he believes that Derek Moore fits a role and a type that the Detroit Lions have or want on their roster. So, I mean, I do think, but I think he's more pick 50 than pick 17, right? Which is, I think, what you're alluding to. So, I mean, with the way this board fell, what do you do? Like, do you take the best player, quote unquote, consensus on the board? And let's assume for the time being that the consensus that's being shown to us is the Detroit Lions consensus as well, because we don't know what their consensus is. He likes value after round one and locks in the first. Injury history is the problem in round two, not round one. Well, JMO, right? JMO has an injury history in round one. Tyleik Williams was banged up in round one, and they took him there. Not Penny, not he is certainly, I would agree with you, Brian, that he certainly does value players with an injury history outside of the first round more so than he does inside of the first round, right? But when you trade up 20 spots from 32 to take a wide receiver who tore out his knee like 4 months before the draft, like I think that you have to give some latitude to the fact that Brad Holmes will do it regardless if he sees the value in the player. I hope we trade up and get 4 picks in the top 75. BD Buster, how the hell is that going to happen? I'm being serious. So like they have picks 17 and 50, and then they don't pick again until round 4. So pick 75 is the top third of the third round. So how are we getting 2 additional top 75 picks? Because the only way I can see them doing it is trading like picks in the 2027 class. And like that has not worked out for the Lions like that is a move similar to Giovanni Manu and Sione Vaki, which are players who have contributed virtually nothing. So I would love to take 4 players in the top 75, to your point. I think that, but the only way that you are going to get that is to trade down in both rounds 1 and round 2. I just cannot understand how DT isn't on our needs list. So I do think that it should be on the needs list. Fan man. The team went from having to in some way, shape, or form, DJ Reader, Ali McNeil, Tyleik Williams, Roy Lopez, Levine Wuzurike, and even Josh Paschal would play inside some amount of the time. Like there's 6 guys, right? And of those 6 contributors, you have Tyleik Williams, Ali McNeil that are still on the roster. They cut Paschal. They let Lopez walk. They're letting Reader walk. It is certain that the DT room is certainly thinner than it has been up in the entire time. We don't know that Levine Wuzurike is going to be healthy. He's only been healthy 1 year in 4 that he's been on the roster. Right. So they're losing starter level players for them. Levi and Paschal had injury history. They did, Joseph. Yes. Low key injury histories, let's call it. We do not need 1,000 snaps with our depth chart and nothing else, but a top DT pick feels mandatory. So, Detroit fan man, might I introduce you to Lee Hunter from Texas A&M, who I think would be I think he's going to be an absolute monster in the NFL. And I have constantly wanted a guy, a 3-tech that can actually produce pressure. I like Ali McNeil, but he is some hybrid between a nose tackle and a 3-tech. And he's just not good at either thing, in my opinion. Or I should say he's not good enough at either thing. The problem with the NFL, if it is a problem, is that they have gone to this kind of matchup uncertainty that both defenses and offenses want to generate. And when you have hybrid guys like Ali McNeil, Josh Paschal, Tyleik Williams, Marcus Davenport, these kinds of players that have quote inside outside versatility, their skill sets are too stretched to be elite at any one thing, and therefore they don't cause matchup problems. Right? So if we're looking at this board right here, and we're looking at defensive tackle, right? This board has several players that I think would be excellent for Detroit to take. I think Peter Woods is being underrated because Clemson had a bad year, and they asked him to do different things this last year than he did when he was considered to be a top 5 pick after 2024. I wonder about the RAS score on Hunter concerning Holmes. Well, let's look at it. Ooh, that is a bad RAS. Let's see if we can figure out why that is. Okay, so let's see. He got a great grade for his composite size. Height, weight were excellent. Explosion grade, very poor. Vertical was not good. Broad jump was not good. Composite speed grade was okay. 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, 10-yard split were all in the red. So Yeah, so he didn't test well, right? I would also say that, like, I think that he's the kind of player that when I mean, like, he thrived this year because he was playing next to, like, David Bailey and Romello Height, and, like, their other defensive tackle isn't like a slouch either, you know? So, like, I wonder if when you put a guy like Peter Woods, Lee Hunter next to Aiden Hutchinson, if it exemplifies the things that they're good at, even if they don't test well, right? Let's see. That undervaluing could be the key to Woods being this class's biggest steal. Yeah, you're correct. So here's my question. Is it better to have the biggest steal, or is it better to be like Spencer Fano is sitting right there and like that's just a dude? Maybe he's not an all pro, but he's going to be like, maybe he's Taylor Decker again. You know, Taylor Decker was Mr. Solid Tackle for 10 years on this roster. You know, like if you got 2 contracts of better than average play out of Spencer Fano, is that worth the 17th pick in the draft? Or do you have to aim higher? Do you have to aim higher than that in order for it to be worth the 17th pick? Penn State guys should be suspect too because record kind of like Clemson. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that you'd have to ask yourself, if they have all these good players, why was it that the team completely fell apart? Right? Like, so Penn State has both running backs, Drew Aller, their quarterback, Dennis Dutton Smith was a defensive end. There's Zane Bryant was another D lineman. They've got a safety named Zeke Wheatley, I think. And there might be they've got Rucci, I think, is a guy that they've got as a tackle. Like, they have a bunch of candidates to be contributing NFL players, but then, like, if that's the case in your roster, and the same thing for Clemson, like, if you have a roster full of like NFL talent, why didn't that roster win a bunch of football games? You know, like with Penn State, I think it's a little bit easier to understand. Like, you're in a conference with Ohio State, Oregon, you know, Michigan some years, that, you know, and then of course Penn State, like the elites of college football. And then, but like if you're Clemson and you're in the ACC, what's your fucking excuse? I mean, so I mean, like, so if we just go back to like all the positions here that are available to us at pick 17, if the Detroit Lions are not locked into taking a particular position, like, what's the guy here that they should take, in your opinion? Draft Spencer and start Borum. While Woods becomes the defensive rookie of the year for someone else, and our defensive line is embarrassing. Give me the best guy in his position, not the fourth OT. Well, I mean, so like, okay, so Fan Man, if Peter Woods is the best defensive tackle and the number 1 player at his position, and Fano is the 4th OT, I mean, wouldn't it be better to take the better player between those two? And for the sake of the conversation, let's assume that this ranking here, the draft board, is an actual listing of who the better player is. Like, Spencer Fano is close to being, per this board, a top 10 player in this class that you can pick at 17. So if we're going to use this criteria, tell me the argument for taking the 24th best player when you can have the 11th. You know, like, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, I don't know that saying he's the top guy at his position group means that he's better than the 4th best player at this other guy's position group. I haven't dug into the draft. I just want dogs without it. It's like 1,000 paper cuts. Move Sewell and draft Vega and run left. Okay, so like, if you, let's say that you took Spencer Fano here and you started him at right tackle, and you moved Penei Sewell to left, and Borum becomes your Dan Skipper. How much do you guys like that? How much is that? Okay, I see the vision. I like the plan. I have no qualms whatsoever that Penei Sewell can play left tackle. He did in college, the 3 years that he was in college. He's been a right tackle every year since, and we know he's probably a Hall of Famer at right tackle. But if you have to put him at left tackle, like, does Gibbs take a hit because you don't have Penei Sewell out there just knocking dudes on their ass when you're running right? And like, I'm sure that they drafted Tate Ratledge to some degree, maybe not much, but to some degree, because it was like, this guy's excellent next to Penei, and like, like, I think the Lions, if there was somebody like Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles on the board here, or maybe even Jermod McCoy from Tennessee, I think that I would take those players over whatever tackle was here, because I think that they directly contribute to making the Detroit Lions better in areas that they are worse in than any other spot. If not, then I think that the Lions and the way that they want to run their offense are required to have near elite offensive line play. And the reason I think that is that they have clearly made an investment, or are going to make an investment, in Jahmyr Gibbs. And you guys know, I am not a huge Jared Goff supporter. Like, I don't give a shit about the stats. Like, he can have 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 8 picks in a 9-8 season and have the exact same stats 2 years ago, and they win 15 games. So don't tell me that the stats equate to how well he's playing, right? But I think that he's better when he has a good offensive line in front of him, right? So, like, if Vega was on the board here and you told me, like, which of these two scenarios is better? Penei Sewell on the left with Vega Ione next to him, and then Cade Mays, or drafting, let's say, Blake Miller from Clemson at 17, who I think that the Lions like, or I've heard that the Lions like, and then keeping Sewell on the right side next to Tate Ratledge for the running game. Do you think we pick up any secondary in this draft? I would guess not. The reason I think not is that right now, Terrion Arnold seems to be, like, his situation hasn't turned south yet. You still have DJ Reed. They signed Roger McCreary to be the nickel. They signed Christian Izien, I think, to be both a nickel and a safety. I think they are planning on Kirby Joseph starting the season. Now, Darnold just showed you that Goff can win. Hard disagreement on that. I will say, though, that to your point, like, the common ground between that point and the way that I feel is that I feel that Sam Darnold is around the same level of player, quarterback-wise, that Jared Goff is. But Sam Darnold did not win the Super Bowl for the Seattle Seahawks. Like, their defense and their running game won it. And, like, Detroit doesn't have the kind of defense that Seattle has. They have a great defense, and Detroit does not. Even if everybody's healthy, like, Detroit's defense is not up to the level that Seattle's is. And, like, the reason that Seattle has a great defense is that they have put premium resources. I mean, they stole Devin Witherspoon from right in front of us 4 years ago or whatever, right? And they have continually drafted. They have drafted well for their defense early. First and second round picks. They're just loaded on that defense, and, like, the other thing that their defense does is that they pass rush by committee. They don't have an elite pass rusher like Aiden Hutchinson, and I'm not saying that the Lions should have passed on him. Right, if the defense could get a stop. If the defense can't get a stop, then the offense has to score every time. I look at those two things as the exact mirror images of each other. So if the defense can't get a stop, they're not good enough, right? Well, then the offense has to score every time, and if they don't, then they're not good enough. So what do you do? So to me, with this board right here, I'm going to take Fano and figure it out later. I'm getting the position of value that I want. I'm getting a good player that I think that I can fit. I'd go Peter Woods, maybe Giannis. You know what we'll do, Fan Man? After this draft, we'll go the other way. We'll go all defense, and we'll see what that looks like too. Okay. You know, to be fair about it. Come on, Lee Hunter, make it there. Nope. And there goes Giannis. Okay, so we've got Christian Miller. Might be good. Derek Moore's on the board. Keontae Scott's on the board. Traden Stukes is on the board. This is the guy that I'm wondering if the Lions will take and turn into a safety. And like this looks like the kind of player to me that you can train him to do every position in the defensive backfield, and he's just a chess piece. Like, I don't see a 3-tech pass rushing defensive tackle here. Derek Moore is here. I would be leaning toward Derek Moore. And they were completely healthy, right? See, that's the other thing, right? Like, BD Buster brings up an excellent point. Like, the Seattle Seahawks roster was almost completely healthy in their starting 11 on both sides of the ball. You know, like, if Detroit was completely healthy, we may not be having half of these conversations right now. You know, but like, that's been the problem with the Lions the last 2 years, is that we have fewer contributors from our incoming draft classes the last 2 years, and then everybody got hurt. So there's been a huge talent drain during in season on the roster. Well, the 27 draft class is shaping up to be like a once in a decade class. You're going to have somewhere between 4 and 6 quarterbacks that would be the number 1 pick in this class or close to it. And then you have guys like Jeremiah Smith, the Coleman kid who just transferred to Texas, as wide receivers who are going to be number 1 wide receivers in the NFL. You've got players like Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, who could be the next best pass rusher in the NFL. And then on top of that, you've got the depth that this kind of class has rounds 2 through 4. So, I mean, like, the thing about that this class doesn't have is it doesn't have any top heavy talent. And like the best players are players that positions, non-positions of value. And next year's class is you're going to have a ton of quarterbacks, and you're going to have a ton of players at positions of value at the top of their position groups. And so, like, if the 27 class was this year, Detroit would be in such a better spot at 17, because you're going to have something like 8 or 9 players automatically get pushed down the board because the Lions are not drafting a quarterback, and they're not drafting a running back, and they're not drafting a wide receiver, you know, and like that's going to push the other best players of their position groups closer to the Lions. This draft class, the only pick that we're 100% sure of is that the Raiders are taking Fernando Mendoza. The Raiders are taking Mendoza at 1. End of discussion. Draft starts at 2. There are some years like the draft starts at 4 or 5. So, I mean, when the Lions are picking closer to the top 10, you want a class like the 27 class to follow right behind it, because it's chock full of great players. You know. So I'm going to take Derek Moore here because I think he's the best talent on the board for what the Lions need. And then, but like, these are not the picks that I would be picking if I was picking in place of Brad Holmes. Okay, so Sam Roush, I don't think he'll be there at round 4, but if he's there at round 4, I'm taking him. I really like this Markel Bell guy. He's just enormous. But I'm going to take Dalen Everett here because I think this Terrion Arnold thing is going to blow up in his face. And beyond that, Ennis Rakestraw's been hurt. You have a bunch of guys on 1-year deals. DJ Reed is a number 2 corner, not a number 1 corner. Like, I just don't think that the cornerback room is at all set yet. And then I'm going to have to go here after this next draft that we do. So let's see. I'm going to take this linebacker from Oregon because they don't have – I don't think that Damone Clark is a replacement for Alex Anzalone. I am going to take this quarterback because he ran a 4.3 at the combine and he's super tall, and I don't believe in Teddy Bridgewater. I'm going to take this Michael Taft kid because I think that he's all grit, and I think the Detroit Lions are going to fall in love with him. Now I'm going to take this corner from Iowa, largely because he went to Iowa, and they love Iowa players, and they need another corner. I'm going to take an Iowa pass rusher because I just don't believe that the room is the way it needs to be right now, and like, can this guy beat out another player? So like, okay, so if we go all teams, we go down to the Lions, and we look at who we took. Fano, Derek Moore, Sam Roush, Dalen Everett, Bryce Bocher, Taylor Green, Michael Taft, TJ Hall, Max Llewellyn. But like, I don't know that draft makes the Lions better this year. You know, I think it makes them better in 3 years, you know, or whatever. So hopefully we'll be able to leverage some value in this one. So this one we are going Casey Concepcion. What the fuck? All right, so this time we're gonna do what Detroit Fan Man has wanted, and we're gonna take Peter Woods at this point. So this time we're going, let's try and fix the defensive side of the ball, right? So let's imagine a world where, so like, let's do it like this. This last year, when the Lions had a quote unquote worse offensive line, right? They were still the 5th highest scoring offense, and they were the 6th most efficient passing attack in the NFL, EPA per play. And that was with Goff getting sacked more times than he's ever been sacked, and the quote unquote not using David Montgomery, right? So those two things, if you don't improve the offensive line, that should be your baseline for your offense, which is that this is a pass first, run second offense. Trading back and getting Miller or a Honicher, yeah, no worries, makes this draft awesome. We can, you know, I have done that a couple of times, Brian, and I completely agree with you. Like there, and maybe if I hurry up and talk less, maybe we could do something like that real quick. All right, so we took a defensive tackle. So now what I want to do is I want to take, I'm going to take Trayden Stukes here, okay? And the reason why I'm going to take Trayden Stukes is that I think that I can fit him into anywhere I need to fit him in the secondary. Okay, so if, let's say Trayden Stukes is this year's Brian Branch, right? What's crazy, BD Buster? If Trayden Stukes is this year's Brian Branch and Branch comes back healthy, even if you cut Kirby Joseph because his knee's never going to be the same, you're right back to having an elite pairing at a position. And the Detroit Lions need to find elite pairings at the same position: wide receiver, running back, corner, safety, linebacker, pass rusher, defensive tackle, whatever it is, right? In order, I think, to create defensive mismatches so that they can have an easier time winning. He's going to have to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich turn into a steak. I couldn't want his job. I don't know what that means. Again, for the room, though, I'm believing Holmes thinks the Oilers already built and Borum is our new right tackle. Even if the line is done, he'll focus on interior or the defensive line and shore up the D. Well, so this is what we're trying to do here. Okay, so we took a defense. So maybe like a Deontay Lawson here would be valuable. So like now we have taken a player at every level of the defense. 6'3", 226. That's closer to a safety than a linebacker. Okay, so he is known as the defensive signal caller, showcasing high football IQ, good athleticism, and reliable tackling ability. So those are all things the Lions prize. His primary weakness is the concern over his durability and his need to improve his technique in shedding blocks more consistently at the line of scrimmage. So the technique thing can be improved. His strength can probably be improved. Let's take a guy at each level of the defense and then reassess what we need, right? Okay, so now like your defense might look, oh, we're already back. Okay, so let's take boy, there's really no corners or anything right now. Okay, in the absence of corners, let's take this kid, Zane Durant. Like Eric Schlitt at Pride of Detroit has said that this guy is somebody on day 3 that we should be taking a look at. 6'2", 290. He's got big hands. He might be like a rotational defensive lineman. And like the defensive line, especially on the interior, has lost a lot of depth. So maybe this is a pick that helps that. And like I am of the opinion that Detroit should be spending 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks on players to be backups. Why, Drew? Why would that doesn't make any sense? Why would you do that? Because like if you take a guy like Zane Bryant, who might be a starter on another team's roster, you have him cost controlled as a backup for 4 years. So keep doing that. And then when his contract's up, you can let guys like that walk. And then maybe you get a compensatory pick for him. Or maybe, you are helping the cap breathe a little bit by getting some flexibility. Rayshon Benny, I would love to draft Rayshon Benny here because that's another guy that Eric Schlitt has said it might be a good 4-eye technique for the Lions. But I'm going to take another linebacker here in Bryce Bocher. So like the idea that Malcolm Rodriguez is going to hold up at will linebacker is a mystery. They re-signed him to a 1-year deal. This is very clearly a prove-it year for him. And outside of his first year, I mean, he just looks like a core special teamer to me. Like, and I don't have anything against core special teamers, but eventually you can't just draft all of them, Oh, I'm going to take Jason Kennedy here. I'm going to take Royer because we need a tight end. I'm going to take Kalen Black because I believe that the running back room's lost some what am I looking for? Oh, they've changed this guy from a fullback at Navy to a wide receiver. I think that's pretty interesting. Let's just take that guy. We're almost done anyways. All right, so after this, I'm gonna do a trade down for BD Buster draft. So we've got Peter Woods, Traden Stukes, Deontay Lawson. Then we've got backups in both Durant and Bocher, and Kennedy. So and then we've got additions to the tight end, running back, and wide receiver. Although I think this guy's more of a fullback than he is a wide receiver. Room. So I mean, there's another thing that they could do. Let's start this one over. And so this time, this is the BD Buster draft. Rodriguez and Barnes are terrible players. They have no business starting or playing significant. Broski Bear. They have no business starting or playing significant minutes. Lions need linebacker to put next to Campbell. You're welcome, Detroit fan, man. So like before the combine, when Sonny Styles was still ascending, I thought, oh man, this would be great to pair him next to Jack Campbell. And I'd even talked to Mike about the possibility of trading up to go get him. Ooh, Kansas City traded up for Bain. Look at that. That's fun. Okay, so this is our trade down. All right, so we're just going to trade down. So the thing about trading down, in a BD Buster, if you're still listening, the thing about trading down is when you trade down, you don't just trade down blind. You trade down with an eye on who you could be taking where you trade down. Okay, so let's look at our options. We can trade down to 46 and pick up a 1 next year, which I might do because I think that's great. We can trade down 4 spots and pick up a 3rd round pick. This is a pretty standard package in the NFL that you see happen. And then we have two different. So the choice is here: trade out of the 1st round into the 2nd round, pick up a 1 next year, which I love that idea. And like if it was me and I'm the GM, I might do it. Is the TA situation, if he gets caught by lines, they should go CB early. Yep. So I don't know that situation is going to blow up Broski before the draft. I mean, it would have to happen pretty quickly. And like, even if it did blow up, then the Lions are probably going to say something like, we're going to wait for the process to work itself out. And then we'll see what like the legal system actually determines, like something like that. Okay, so we're going to trade. I'm going to take the Pitt deal here to go down 4 spots. They take Proctor. Okay, so we've traded down. I'm going to take Ione here, I think. Right? We picked up a 3rd round pick. This will certainly be an upgrade at left guard. And then let's see what happens. You know? Like Dylan Tiananmen is also an interesting pick. Let's look and see if we have any other picks. We can trade down 2 picks and pick up a 4th rounder. We can trade out of the 1st again. We can trade out of the 1st again. I don't really like any of those. We can take a left tackle here, and we picked up a 3rd rounder for it. Right? Okay, so you like Ione? Okay. You know, so like I think that we're getting a deal because we're taking the 17th rated player at the 21st pick, and we pick up the 3rd rounder. Let's do that. Like he is the best player on the board, right? There goes Miller. Will Ihanacher go? I'm guessing yes. Yeah, he always goes to Atlanta. God damn it. Okay, so we could take Gabe Yakas here. And we're still making improvements. Sewell and Vega on the left would be nasty. I agree. Let's look at what our trade down options are here. We can trade down 22 spots. We can improve our 5th rounder by 47 spots to a 4th rounder. And we could pick up a 3rd next year. That seems pretty good. We can trade down 21 spots and give up our 4th round pick for a 2nd round pick. Or we can trade down 14 spots and pick up another 3rd rounder. And I can tell you right now, this is the one that I'm doing. So if you're Seattle and you want to trade up for a running back, you can be my guest. I'll take your 3rd round pick. Okay, so here we are at pick 64. I'm going to take AJ Halsey here. So who have we picked so far? We took Vega Ione, and we haven't taken anybody else yet. So now I'm going to take this safety that I think will help alleviate the Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch injury situation. Okay, so now we have two picks in round 3, which we should have had anyway, but we traded them for Isaac Tesla. What to do. Okay, so I really like this kid, Skylar Bell, but we certainly do not need another. We certainly do not need another wide receiver. After this pick, we have pick 96. So I'm going to take this kid, Kyle Lewis. He's basically a safety that could play where Alex Anzalone played. And Colton Pouncey over at The Athletic really seems to like this kid. So let's just, for science, take him. I think the other thing about this draft class that not a lot of people are talking about, Wheatley would be nice. Okay. Keep that in mind. I agree with you. We know Brian's not going to be ready to go. And will Kirby Joseph be ready to go? That's the big question. We have no answers. No answers on. So let's see. I do want, we could take Jonah Coleman here. LT Overton might be an interesting pick. He's kind of slid down boards here, but he would be a defensive lineman that I think would fit that Marcus Davenport style of player. So we took Vega Ione, and then we got a safety, and then the bonus players that we drafted with our acquired third round picks are Kyle Lewis and LT Overton. So the question that I think needs to be asked whenever someone is quote unquote trading down is, does the value that you get by trading down equate to the opportunity cost of what you're giving up without trading down, right? So we took Vega Ione, and we could have taken, let's say, Caden Proctor, or some, maybe a better defensive player. Is a left guard even a really good one? Like, let's say he's Quentin Nelson. Come again. Is that worth the other player? We don't know. We hope so. So here we're going to take Oscar Delp for Drew Petzing's new tight end room that seems to be a little understaffed at the moment. Then I'm going to speed this up again because I got to get something to eat before I go to work. Okay, this kid, Emmett Johnson, had a really good combine. Not a great RAS score or whatever. He profiles as a versatile 3-down back with high upside. So I am not saying that you take somebody like this to share snaps with Jahmyr Gibbs. What I'm saying is, if the worst happens and Jahmyr Gibbs is hurt and can't play, what do you want to be the backup? Beating a dead horse, though, wouldn't this class require us to re-sign Reader, who was already potentially unavailable? Maybe. I mean, maybe the Reader replacement is a UDFA, which I know sounds terrible. Yeah, you've mentioned Katron Allen, which I think is a worthwhile pick. We're going to take Johnson here for the fun of it. I would not draft Nick Singleton, though, the other Penn State running back. He is like a straight line only. So we took a linebacker. We took Kyle Lewis, right? So I like this Trey Zune kid. He was a left tackle at A&M who's going to convert to a center. And so even if he's the 8th offensive lineman on the team, he's an offensive lineman that has positional versatility at I think maybe the 2 most important positions on the line, because Penei Sewell's locking up the other one. So I'm going to take Rayshon Benny here as a 4-eye depth player. And when you start to trade down, I think it's easy to say, like, I don't see the role for that particular player. This is the quarterback for me. And it's okay, because one of the points of trading down is the quantity over quality argument, but you're saving those quality points because if you're able to hit on, say, like, so like Amon-Ra St. Brown was the 4th round pick that has become a multiple time All Pro, right? Like you're almost never going to get better value than that outside of day 2, right? That is just value personified, right? So that can't be the standard for what you're trying to get out of like a day 3 pick, right? But like Amon-Ra St. Brown is as important to the overall success of this roster as almost any other player because of the role that they occupy, right? So, I mean, like, let's take a look at what we did here. We took Vega Ione, AJ Halsey, Kyle Lewis, LT Overton, Oscar Delp, Emmett Johnson, Trey Zune, Rayshon Berry, Cole Payton, Nate Burkirker, and Vincent Anthony. So, like, I can understand how everybody on like the right column here, everybody could be like, man, I don't really like any of those picks. Yeah, and I agree. Maybe there's nothing there that's like, oh my God, you got that guy in round 5 or whatever. But if all of those guys just come in and do your jobs and you don't have to worry about tight end 3, defensive tackle 4, cornerback 5, safety 3, like that kind of stuff, and you can nail down some of those depth issues on cost controlled contracts, you're winning. You're pulling ahead. I mean, that would be a better upside than say like the kinds of contracts that the Lions just went out and signed in free agency, because these are all 4-year guaranteed deals as opposed to 1-year prove it contracts. And these guys probably play behind the 1-year prove it guys because those guys are NFL veterans and to some degree have proven that they belong in the NFL, and these guys haven't proven that yet. But you give these guys an opportunity to prove it, and if you hit on any of them, and I'm like, what I consider a hit to be for like a 4th or 5th round pick is that like, can you come in and play 300 snaps a year at your position? Like Sione Vaki to me is not a hit because he is just a special teamer. Like when they lost David Montgomery and Craig Reynolds, they went from having potentially from anywhere between like 3 and 4 deep to you have Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's who you have. And like, if you guys really like Isaiah Pacheco, that's cool. But there's a reason why he's not playing in Kansas City anymore, right? And like, if you listen to Miko on the Pride of Detroit cast, be like, he's going to run through some guys' faces, and Detroit Lions fans are really going to love him this year. I'm like, okay, but he didn't run through other people's faces in Kansas City. Their fans don't love him. So why is he not a Chief? And the reason he's not a Chief is he doesn't do the thing that he's supposed to do very well. And that's why they're paying him $1.8 a year as opposed to like what they were paying David Montgomery, like 5 or 6 times that amount. Good tape, good RES, good teammate, poor 40 time. He is your guy, maybe. And like you cannot avoid some type of red flag on day 3. If you could, they'd be 2nd round picks. If we had better offensive line last year, David would still be with us. That's an interesting statement. So let me ask you this, BD Buster. If you have so Jahmyr Gibbs had like 1,200 rushing yards last year and like 13 touchdowns on the ground. If they had a better offensive line, what leads you to believe that they would have given those additional, more efficient carries to David Montgomery as opposed to Jahmyr Gibbs? Crazy, they never gave IP a single carry within 5 yards of the end zone last year. Casey knows something about him. I'm scared we're about to learn. Well, I mean, like, I think that they know it, but there's a reason why you pay that guy under $2 million to be your 2nd running back, and it's because he's okay getting 5 to 10 carries a game, and David Montgomery's not. And that's the reason. Like, they didn't go out and pay for an equivalent player. They went out and paid for a guy who's not going to make waves with his role. Because when you had Frank in the middle was open for more rushing. Yeah, well, I mean, I wish Frank had not all of a sudden decided to retire. I mean, I wish that once a week, or what have you. But like he did, and he put us in a bad way. And like, no matter what, like when you lose a Hall of Famer at any position, like the ability to replace him is you're not going to be able to, right? Like you have to figure out how to live with less. And unfortunately, like we're gonna have to figure out like Graham Glasgow wasn't the answer. Can Cade Mays be the answer at center for the Lions for the next couple of years? So, but none of them are Frank Ragnow. So, anyways, guys, I appreciate you guys being with me here today. Stay safe, stay warm. It's 30 degrees colder outside than it was yesterday, which I think is the most Michigan thing ever. And I will talk to you here next week. We are looking to do our group mock draft April 20th. So that's only a couple of days before the draft. And then we will be also streaming our live draft coverage of me and Mike and our friend group when we're watching the first round live. So if you guys want to join us for any of that, we would love you guys to just check in. I'm sure you guys got your own stuff. Oh, thank you very much, Joseph. I appreciate that. I think Monty is a number one. I mean, that's the problem, is that there's a difference of opinion there. But like I firmly believe that David Montgomery is the number one running back in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, like he was my second favorite player on the team, so I'm pretty bummed out. Anyways, thanks you guys for joining us. Really appreciate you guys talking to me. I will see you here next week. See you later.